There is a question that has lived inside me for a very long time. Not the kind of question you find in a book or hear from a teacher in a comfortable lecture hall. The kind of question that wakes you before dawn, when the monastery is still wrapped in silence, and the incense from the night before has settled into the wood of the floor, into the fabric of your robes, into something that feels almost like memory. I remember sitting in that darkness, cross-legged on a stone step that had been worn smooth by generations of feet, and staring up at a sky so full of stars, it seemed almost cruel in its vastness. And the question rose in me the way cold water rises through still ground. If there is no self, who is reborn? I want you to sit with that question for a moment before we go any further. Not to answer it. Not yet. Just to feel the weight of it, the strange vertigo it produces, like standing at the edge of something very high and very beautiful at the same time. Because this question is not just a philosophical puzzle, it is an invitation to look at the most fundamental assumption you have ever made about your life, which is the assumption that there is a you at all. To continue healing your body and soul through these ancient teachings, I invite you to join our path by subscribing to this sanctuary. Every week we sit together in this quiet place between ancient wisdom and the noise of modern life, and we ask the questions that the world outside rarely has the patience for. Subscribe now and let this be your place of return. Let us begin at the beginning, or at least at what the beginning feels like from inside a human life. The first insight I want to offer you today is this: the self is not a thing, it is a story. From the moment you were old enough to hold a continuous thought, your mind began narrating. It said, "I am the child who is afraid of the dark. I am the student who is not as smart as the others. I am the person who was left. I am the one who survived." And with each chapter, each experience, each wound, and each small joy, the story grew more elaborate, more convincing, more total. By the time you reached adulthood, the story had become so seamless that you stopped noticing it was a story at all. You began to call it yourself. But here is what the Buddha noticed, sitting under that Bodhi tree more than 2,500 years ago. He looked and he looked and he looked, with a quality of attention most of us never bring to anything. And he could not find a self anywhere, not a permanent one, not a fixed center. What he found instead was a river, always moving, always changing. The water that is here now is not the water that was here a moment ago, and yet we look at the river and we say, "That is the same river. That is the Mississippi. That is the Ganges." We give it a name, and we mistake the name for a thing. The second insight is what the Buddhist tradition calls the 5 aggregates, the skandhas, which is a Sanskrit word you do not need to memorize, but which I want you to feel. The teaching says that what we call a person is simply 5 streams flowing together. There is form, which is the body, the warmth of skin, the weight of bones, the breath moving in and out of the chest. There is sensation, the raw quality of experience before the mind has labeled it, and the heat before you call it heat, the ache before you call it grief. There is perception, the mind that recognizes and categorizes. There is mental formations, the intentions and habits and emotional patterns that shape how we move through the world. And there is consciousness, the bare knowing quality, the simple fact that experience is happening at all. Now I want you to notice something. Look for the self inside any one of those 5 streams. Is the self the body? You have had the same body your entire life, and yet you know beyond any doubt that the person you are today is not the person you were at 7 years old, is the self-consciousness. But consciousness shifts with every breath, contracts in fear, expands in love, disappears entirely in deep sleep. Where does the self go when you sleep without dreaming? Does it wait somewhere? Does it hold its breath? The third insight is perhaps the strangest and most liberating of all. The Buddha did not say there is nothing. He was not a nihilist, and this is one of the most important misunderstandings in all of Western reception of Buddhist thought. He did not say the self does not exist at all, the way a square circle does not exist. He said the self exists the way a flame exists. A flame is real. You can see it. You can warm your hands by it. It can burn you. And yet, the flame you see right now is not the same flame that was burning a moment ago. It is sustained by a continuous process. Fuel is consumed. Oxygen is drawn in. Heat is released. The flame is the name we give to the process, not the name we give to a thing. Close your eyes for a moment if you're able to do so safely. Place one hand gently on your chest. Feel your heart beating. Notice that you did not start your heart. You did not instruct it to beat. It beats because of 10,000 prior causes. The food you ate, the sleep you had, the ancient evolutionary inheritance carried in every cell of your body. The heart beating right now under your hand is a process, not a possession. And the one who is aware of the heart beating, that awareness too, is a process. A flame, real and luminous and not a thing. The fourth insight brings us to the question of rebirth directly. If there is no fixed self, what exactly moves from one life to another? The tradition offers a beautiful and demanding answer. What continues is not a soul, not a ghost, not a personality that steps out of one body and steps into another like changing clothes. What continues is karma, which in its deepest meaning is simply the momentum of intention. Every action you take arises from an intention. Every intention arises from a habit of mind. Every habit of mind was shaped by prior actions and intentions. This chain of cause and effect does not require a self to carry it. It carries itself, the way a wave carries energy across the ocean without carrying any particular water. Imagine you light a candle. From that candle, you light another. The first candle goes out. Now tell me, is the flame in the second candle the same flame that was in the first? It is not the same. It is not different. It arose because of the first. It carries the energy of the first. But there is no little flame soul that jumped from one wick to another. The great Theravada teacher, Nagasena, explained this exact thing to a Greek king named Menander over 2,000 years ago. And the king, like all of us, sat back and had to breathe for a moment. The fifth insight is this, and it is the one that tends to shake people most when they first encounter it. The question of whether rebirth is literally true across multiple biological lifetimes is, in a certain reading of the Dharma, secondary to what the teaching is pointing at in this very moment. Because rebirth is happening right now. In every moment, the self that existed a moment ago has already passed away, and a new configuration of the five aggregates has arisen. You are being reborn continuously. The person who began listening to this video is not quite the same as the person who is listening now. Something has shifted, even if subtly. The mind has moved. A new moment has arisen. This is not metaphor. This is a description of what consciousness actually does. And when you begin to see it, really see it, something in the chest loosens. the grip of the story about who you are starts to soften. If I am always already dying and being born again, then the mistakes of the past belong to a self that no longer exists. The grief that I carry belongs to a configuration of causes and conditions that is already dissolving. I do not need to be free of the past. I need only to see that I am not imprisoned by it, because the prisoner and the prison are both, in each moment, dissolving and reforming, like clouds over the morning mountain. The sixth insight is about what the Zen tradition calls the original face, your face before your parents were born. This is a koan, which is a question designed not to be answered by the thinking mind, but to exhaust the thinking mind, to wear it out the way a river wears down stone, until something deeper is revealed. Your face before your parents were born does not mean a prior lifetime, though it may include that. It means the awareness that is present before the story of self begins. Before the narrating mind said, I am this, I am not that, there was something simply open, simply present, simply aware. That awareness is what you actually are. And that awareness does not die, not because it is an immortal soul, but because it was never born in the sense we usually mean. It is the space in which birth and death occur, not one of the things that occurs within it. Sit with that for a moment. Let the body be still. Let the breath move on its own, which it is already doing, which it has always been doing without your help. Notice the awareness that is aware of the breath. That awareness is not tired, it is not anxious, it has no age, it does not remember your worst day or rehearse your greatest fear. It is simply here, simply open, like the sky that holds the storm without becoming the storm. The seventh insight is about suffering and why this teaching matters beyond the philosophical. Most of the suffering in a human life comes from defending and maintaining and protecting and extending the story of self. I was wronged. I deserve more. I am not enough. I am too much. These are all movements of a self that is trying to make itself solid, trying to make itself real, trying to prove its own existence against the constant evidence that it is not as fixed as it believes. When you see through the illusion of the fixed self, not as an idea but as a lived recognition, the defending stops. There is nothing that needs defending. There is no castle wall to maintain. And in that softening, something extraordinarily gentle becomes possible, which is compassion for yourself, and from that compassion for every other being who is also suffering because they are also gripping the same story. I remember a monk at our monastery, a man who had been practicing for over 40 years, who had the most extraordinary quality of presence I have ever encountered in a person. Not because he was otherworldly or distant, quite the opposite. He was completely present, completely available, the way a clear pool is available to reflect whatever stands before it. I once asked him what he had learned in 40 years of practice. He was quiet for a long time, watching a sparrow on the branch outside the window. Then he said, very simply, I learned that I was never as real as I thought, and that this is the most wonderful news imaginable. I did not understand that fully then. I am still understanding it now. The eighth insight is this. The teachings on non-self and rebirth are not in contradiction. They are in conversation. They are pointing at the same truth from two different directions. When we say there is no self, we mean there is no fixed, permanent, independent entity. When we say there is rebirth, we mean that karma, the momentum of intentional action, continues across time, the way music continues across the silence between notes. The music is not a thing. It is a relationship between vibration and time and the capacity to hear. And yet, it is real. It moves you. It can change you. It carries meaning. The question is not whether you have a self or you do not. The question is, what kind of process are you? And where is that process flowing? And are the intentions that are fueling it moving toward greater wisdom and compassion, or toward greater fear and grasping? Because here is what karma actually means in a living practice. Every moment of genuine kindness plants a seed that will flower somewhere, in this life or in the next configuration of causes and conditions, whether we call that a future lifetime or simply a future moment. Every moment of conscious awareness, every time you choose to pause before reacting, every time you meet your own suffering with gentleness instead of judgment, you are shaping the momentum of the process. You are tending the flame. You are influencing what the next moment of this continuous arising will be. The ninth and final insight is perhaps the most intimate. The question, if there is no self who is reborn, is ultimately a question about what you love. Because the things we love reveal the things we believe are real. If you love your story, you will defend it and grieve when it is threatened. If you love the awareness that holds the story, you will rest in it, and you will find that it was never threatened at all. The Buddha, on the night of his enlightenment, did not become something he was not before. He saw through what he had falsely believed himself to be. The dropping away of the false is not a loss. It is a homecoming. And you, sitting wherever you are right now, you are already that awareness. You are already the open sky that holds every cloud that has ever crossed your life. The anger, the longing, the shame, the love, the confusion, they have all passed through you. And the you they passed through is still here, unchanged in its essential nature, luminous and vast, and as present as the very breath you are breathing right now. So when someone asks if there is no self who is reborn, perhaps the truest answer is this: the one who asks the question is already the answer. The awareness that is curious enough to sit with this mystery, honest enough to admit it does not know, open enough to feel the vertigo of the question without turning away, that awareness is precisely what the tradition calls Buddha nature, not the self, not the no-self, but the living, breathing, luminous process that is conscious of both and is held by neither. The flame burns, the river flows, the music plays on. And in the morning, when the monastery bell rings and the mist is still clinging to the hillside and the birds have just begun their first tentative notes, something rises from sleep into waking. Something opens, something continues. We do not need to give it a name. We only need to notice it, to be grateful for it, to tend it with the care it deserves, the care that belongs to something precious and temporary, and somehow beautifully, without end. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings know the peace of their own original nature. May this moment, and every moment that arises from it, be a continuation of wisdom and of love.